Awesome. And we are live. Jason, thank you for joining me. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. No, great. Thanks. Great. I usually put a little banner thing on saying we're going live in 30, 29, but everyone switches off when they see that. So I thought we'd be a bit more interesting for a little chit chat. So, but before we start, just to make sure everyone's aware, we've been friends since we were 11.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's crazy. So we'll have a nice chit chat. You're not representing Facebook, which is where you currently work. And yeah, we'll talk about all of this cool stuff about the future of work and tech and all of that stuff, which would be really interesting. So where are you currently?
Based in Singapore. So obviously grew up with you in the UK around London, and then moved. I've been in Singapore for about 7 years. Did a stint in Australia for about 6 years before this. Been around.
You have, and then I think Singapore, correct me if I'm wrong, has dealt with the pandemic stuff quite well.
Yes, it seems to be relatively under control. So we have kind of less restrictions now. So gatherings of 8 people, most restaurants and gyms and things are open. Everyone has to wear a mask outside. But other than that, it kind of feels relatively normal.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Here it's been, the government here have done great with the vaccines.
Yeah, I've heard.
They've really stepped up and got it out. So I'm not quite sure how many we've done. I'm sure it was last time I looked last week, it was like 22 million people or something. But they've done that well. But what's been really interesting is, and we'll talk about this, like the future of cities. So a million people have left London this last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and there were about 12 million, something like that, in Greater London. 1 million have left. I think that's been a bit of a combination of, we've obviously had Brexit, and then we've had the pandemic. So a lot of people because remember in London, I think it's about 55% of people that live in London aren't from the UK. So I think quite a few people, they left for the countryside, or they left to go to wherever country that they were from originally. So it's been really interesting. And so central London right now, and I don't know about Singapore, but you would not recognize it. It's so quiet.
Wow. Yeah. I've heard similar stats for New York and other big cities around the world. Just the kind of city migration into into rural areas, just because you can work remotely and just do your job from anywhere. So why don't you just kind of get out of the city for a while?
But the city's cool though. You're living. How come you didn't leave the city?
Singapore is a city in itself, so there's not really anywhere to go. Right, so it's pretty much 30 minutes. Everything is within 30 minutes within Singapore. So most people would, if you're trying to get out of the city, then you have to go overseas, which is a bit of a challenge with the quarantine and things. So there's not really anywhere to go in Singapore.
So would you have preferred to have been countryside vibe, given you're working from home anyway, or?
Yeah, I think just having that kind of nature and that kind of fresh air and just being able to go for nice walks would have been great if I had the opportunity to do that. Yeah,
because you do loads of traveling, right? Pre-pandemic, you were always on your Instagram. You're trip. How have you coped with, I guess, being in the city? Because there's also pros with being in the city, right? But then all on these Zooms, and we'll talk about the Zoom fatigue stuff in a sec. I mean, has it been difficult to go through?
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled a bit at the beginning because there's very limited things you could do, and I think Singapore is relatively okay, but versus some of my friends and colleagues in other countries who have been completely locked down, just can't even leave their apartment, or can leave for 30 minutes a day to exercise or something like that. And that's pretty insane. Victoria in Australia was pretty crazy at one point and still kind of struggling, but I think it's getting better now. The US obviously is still going through in certain cities and certain states. So definitely I think it's been a struggle, but for me, I struggled a bit at the beginning, and now I've kind of got into a bit more of a routine, and now things are a bit more open and the gym's open, so that's been a massive relief as well.
Awesome. I did my workout this morning in the kitchen. We're still a bit of time. I know.
Yeah.
Be interesting to talk about cities. you've got to talk about offices, right? So we've actually a question from a guy called Pierre. Interested to know what the business office market could be like in the next 20 years, which will be quite interesting. So yeah, and that touches on a lot of different topics, right? So we've all been working at home, and I think pre-pandemic, there's this huge conversation around like work from home. You know, a lot of the forward-thinking companies were talking about and already implementing flexible working. Now, all the offices in cities, I mean, certainly in London, I know some cities in the US are open and have been. Singapore, it sounds like it's slowly starting to open up. But I can't help but feel that there's going to be less requirement for so much office space as we look to the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're right. So a lot of the, especially the tech companies, have installed like remote working policies. So some have said you just can work remote for the rest of the year. Some have even gone so far as to say work remote forever. So there's been some pretty good policies around that. There's obviously tax implications and legal implications for like visas and things like that if you're moving states and moving countries. But yeah, I don't think cities will ever go away. Cities will always be hubs because, like you said, like it's the city. It's cool to be in a city. But I think there's also kind of the flip side, and you mentioned this, like video conference fatigue. There's only so much like remote quizzes and like remote team you can do. We actually launched a game with our team, which is like guess whose fridge it is. So you actually just take a picture of someone's fridge. And it's been really interactive and people love it. So that's been kind of just the novelty thing of things. You can see like peek into people's lives is actually something that people really appreciate. Just makes it much more personable. So yeah, these kind of things have been fun. But I think there's a couple of things like in this remote period, it's kind of even the working or the playing field a bit, right? So usually the people in the headquarters, they get all the attention and just access to all the stakeholders and the leadership team. You see them every day and kind of be able to build that trust. But now everyone is in the same situation working from home. So it's kind of made it much more even. So I think that's an interesting dynamic as well.
True. Apart from if you've just entered the workforce, I mean, I don't know about you, but I learned so much from sitting next to my manager, you know, listening to what they say, how they behave, how they think, you know, those types of things. So a lot of people that are already like further on in their career, you know, like you and I, like we can do our job from anywhere, right? Like, you know what you're up to. You've been working for like, what, 20 years now? Something like that. Almost. Probably, right? 20 years?
Yeah, coming up to 20.
We left school, we left university in something like 2003, 2004. But for those that are just entering the workforce, it's tough. You know, like you might be on your bed. So it's kind of equitable, but not really. Like the working styles are a bit different. If you're not lucky enough to have the space, if you're not lucky enough to be able to, you know, to actually speak regularly and learn from your line managers or your boss or whoever, it's quite tough. And companies need to work super hard, I think, to make sure that they put the right processes in place to make everyone feel included, you know, at all of those different levels. Yeah,
definitely. I think like onboarding in a new job whilst remote is super challenging because you don't kind of get familiar with like other people, and I think that cohort of people that you start with is really important. My job now, I still keep in touch with a bunch of people who I onboarded with, and that's been kind of like a really good network and little community because everyone's kind of going through the same thing. And just you're not afraid to ask these stupid questions in front of those guys. So I think that's really important. And yeah, you're right. So that kind of peer-to-peer learning is just not there. So you just sit next to someone and you can just ask a quick question. Because it's much more of an effort to set up a call and then just like rattle off a bunch of questions.
But it's quite, you're right. And also, you know, if I'm young, I mean, I might not be confident enough, or I might be a bit more introvert to just drop you an email and say, hey, Jason, fancy just popping on a quick Zoom with me? Like it takes quite a lot of courage to be able to do that. Whereas, you know, if I bump into you in the coffee machine, like classic coffee machine thing, you're like, hey, do you fancy a coffee? Yeah, what are you up to? And you just, you know, so they've gone. hopefully they'll come back. I think certainly the old school classic office space is a goner. You know, I think looking forward, it feels like, because you still want human contact and I'm sure you speak to most people, and this is not the working from home that they were campaigning for pre-pandemic. You know, like a lot of people for the positives about the flexibility. So many people have been burning out. So many people are tired. They've been working longer, harder. A lot of people. I spoke to a guy at the school gate yesterday, and he said, "Hey, my product. I'm so like fed up with this that my productivity is down at least 40%." You know, like I think everyone wants a mix. So maybe it's be interesting to think about what that will look like. Whether it's like WeWork style, like informal coffee type places. What do you think it will end up?
Yeah, I've actually got a few friends in the kind of like commercial real estate field. So I think they're going through like a really tough time, and the future is pretty uncertain for them. I think it will just depend on the industry, and it depends on the location as well. For somewhere like Singapore, which is like relatively safe now, and people are kind of everyone's going back to the office. So I think they're doing okay. Yeah.
And is that going back to the office like it was before? Or
no, so it depends. Some companies are like the smaller companies where they have enough space and like low person per square meter type scenario, then I think that they're usually okay. But most companies are going like AB teams, so every other week, or limited capacity. So the government kind of regulates or provides guidance on how many people can go back and the capacity. So it just kind of takes a bit of time.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, because I think a lot of companies I speak to, it's a real mix. The Goldman Sachs CEO said you're all back 5 days a week. Which is quite extreme, it feels. And then on the other side, there's many companies that are saying, work from anywhere.
Yeah,
and I
definitely. I think it depends on the industry, right? So for tech companies, like most roles you can probably do from anywhere, and we've kind of proven this past year. Maybe the Goldman Sachs and trading is because you have your Bloomberg terminals and everything as well. So the multi-screens are a bit more difficult to set up at home if you have like 6 screens. So that might be a challenge, and I can see that kind of being beneficial to go back into the office. But I think definitely the hybrid model is going to be the future. So having the flexibility to kind of work from home or go into the office, book a slot, pick up the kids, whatever it might be. I think that's kind of definitely needed. And we'll just see what happens with the policies.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because also for people's mental health and well-being, you need to move, you need to see people.
Yeah.
It feels like you need to have boundaries, work, personal time, so however people land, and hopefully people will have more choice, because everyone's different, right? Like everyone needs different things and stuff, but it's important to get all of those boundaries and separation, because I think a big theme that's coming out of this is people's mental health, the fatigue, the burnout, and so forth. So that needs to be really thought through. You also, I don't know about you, but I speak to a lot of people. So again, in London, a lot of people commute into London. It's like an hour, 2 hours, depending. Those people I spoke to pre-pandemic always used to moan about the commute, and now like, please come back. I will never moan about you again. Because it's true. It's thought of as wasted time. It was thought of as wasted time, but I'm not so sure. It's like, it's nice just to have a think, prepare yourself, or whether you might want to answer your emails, listen to a podcast, things like that. So I think the commute might be more appreciated. I'm not sure.
I think the grass is always greener, right? So if we do have to go back full time, then people will start complaining again about the 2-hour commute and how crowded the trains are. But you're right. Like, I think it can be productive. Sometimes it's just like a chill time. Sometimes, I mean, whenever I'm walking to like the supermarket or something, I put a podcast on and kind of just absorb information and just learn about something new that way.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's also a good comment from Nick Lakeland, who says it's very clear that businesses don't adapt to the new world. They will lose out on recruiting the right talent, which is true. I think also it goes to the point that everyone wants something slightly different. So, if they go the Goldman Sachs route where you're in 5 days, it's going to attract a certain type of person and not another type of person. You're right. And I think the flexibility thing, is a real sales point. People like flexibility. And then another extreme, I spoke to one client who's scrapping their office completely, which again is quite extreme because people want a spot. Like it's nice to go to a spot and have do the work, have a coffee. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah,
it needs to be
super interesting. Yeah. I mean the expenditure, like if you own a building, capital expenditure, or just like the amount of money you spend on real estate is a lot. For some companies, so it kind of makes sense. Like if you're only kind of using it half the time, then why don't you just let half the office go and just go into like a hot desk arrangement? So
because the other big thing that we haven't said is, of course, the economics. For companies, if you don't need to spend millions of dollars or pounds on rent, you're not going to. And then when you've reduced that, you're never going to go back. So there's the economic driver. There's also the will of people want more flexibility. It certainly makes things a bit more difficult to manage, or certainly for leaders that are managers that have been used to managing and leading pre-pandemic. Sounds like pre-World War and post-World War now. You've got to learn these new skills, right? You've got to trust people more. You've got to accept that people are doing their work, even though you can't see them. But how have you found that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had regional roles with managers overseas for a big part of my career, so I've always kind of been a bit independent. But I can see, now we're working remotely. I can see teams it's a trust thing. So you really have to trust that your team is doing the right thing and actually getting down to work and driving impact and delivering results. I think it's if you have a good manager that you kind of believe in and you want to deliver for, and you believe in the company mission and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just down to personality. There's always going to be people who slack off a bit and kind of just do the minimal. And it's much easier to do that in a remote working kind of environment, right? So you can actually just go hang out in a cafe all day and just do minimal work, and no one will really know, unless you kind of post it on social media, and then that's maybe a little bit stupid. So I've seen that happen a couple of times.
Oh dear. but that you're right, completely right. But that hasn't changed. There's always people that are more motivated or work harder than others. There's always some people that they don't push themselves to the limit. That they're cool just to coast through, and that will translate into whatever the new working style is going to be. You're right. But then some people also, it's good, they need that the person next to them. For me, I mean, I can work from anywhere. I'm super motivated, productive and stuff, but I love going into an office. I really enjoy going in, sitting next to you, chatting, and oh, Jason's work, and it just makes me, I don't know, it gets my energy up.
Yeah. I think it depends on the personality, because if you're an introvert, then you probably just want to stay at home, and you're fine just to have Zoom calls or video conference calls, and maybe you just schedule one a day because you don't really want to talk to people all. But for people like you, much more on the extrovert spectrum, then you need to be around people and get your energy from there, and that's how you kind of deliver results and build teams. It's through kind of
that's true.
People.
That's true. We had another comment which I'll paraphrase the question because it's quite long, but essentially, so is this Pierre? Yeah, so Pierre Meal is saying that most large companies are still operating a command and control structure. Which is probably true. I don't know. I think it's changing. I think it's changing a lot. I mean, the classic corporate structure is, you're in, don't leave before the boss goes, You've got to be in on time. You've got to leave at the same time or later.
Yeah.
There were a lot of cultural differences across the world with that, but because I think in Japan you've got to stay you've always had to stay longer than your boss. I think. America will say you've got to work hard. So it's going to take time to start to break those. But if they don't, the best talent will not go there.
I mean, it's you're right on Japan, Korea, some of these Northeast Asia countries, they are very traditional in that kind of respect, and you can't leave the office until after your boss has left, and that may be super late. So you're kind of staying in the office until like very, very late into midnight sometimes and beyond. But I think in that work environment, you also have to be online throughout that time and just be available. So until your boss is not kind of like has signed off, then you have to be available at that time as well. But I mean, it's easy to kind of like just pretend you're online. So seen people do this as well. So you just kind of like move your mouse a little bit and just like the little green button says that you're still available. And actually this person is probably not available. So
but that's, you're right. And that's also why it's not about time, it's about output. Like, what are you actually producing? Because you also get more productive as you get on and your job better. And so for me, if I think about my industry, it's about output. It's about productivity, great customer service, being kind, empathetic. All of these different little things. It's not necessarily, you've got to work 10 hours all day, or you've got to put. It's quality. And I guess for the stuff that you do as well. I mean, you've got your team need to do certain things. You need to live on certain projects. Whether they spend. Hey, does it matter if someone spends 5 hours organizing it versus 20?
Right. I think it's especially for you and like when you own your own business and all the small business owners out there. Like if you don't kind of work efficiently and deliver results and focus on impact, then you're not going to get paid and you can't pay your bills, right? So I mean, the big corporate world is slightly different because you don't probably have the same kind of pressures, and like if you don't perform or if you're sick for a period of time, you get sick leave. But for some of these like business owners, you just have no option. You have to keep on going.
Yeah. The other thing also, like, would just like to point out is that we're talking about people lucky enough to have the option to choose office-based workers, because there's a lot of people. I mean, there was a story in the Financial Times last week about so East London, like Tower Hamlets and some of the boroughs had really high rates of COVID. And a lot of the people that live there, they're from a lower socioeconomic background. A lot are doing like driving taxis, like Uber, Deliveroo, stuff like that. They didn't want to go get a COVID test. They didn't want to have to self-isolate because they couldn't afford to self-isolate. So yeah, I think with all of this stuff, like it's a great conversation, and I think you always need to feel super like grateful that you're going to have the choice, which is amazing, because there's a lot of people that just can't, the NHS workers and all of that stuff as well. So
I think we talked about it last time. Like, I think we're in very privileged situations. We have a job, we've got an education, we have parents who looked after us and gave us anything that we kind of wanted, and within reason, of course. But then just that education was like provided for us, and we have now got decent jobs, and we can afford to kind of live the way we do. But yeah, you're right. So there's a lot of people who struggle to make ends meet or live on minimum wage, and it's like you're owning your own business is just a struggle. So I mean, kudos to everyone out there who's working really hard to survive. So
definitely. But I think also the technology stuff has been great, because you can earn money on Deliveroo. You just need, I guess, you need a phone and the app, and you can earn money, which is also a great thing. So people have been able to, because you think back to 100 years ago, and if you're working in the farms and et cetera, I mean, I think we're fortunate living in this moment that you can work and then the office life stuff. I mean, I just don't think it's going to get back to the old style.
Yeah.
You know, we're 12 months down the road. I think definitely it varies from country to country. Like it will really vary. Because as you mentioned, actually, some cities in the US, I mean, they're still open. I mean, a lot of them haven't closed. I think Texas, Florida, like they were. So, but I think certainly, so speaking from my experience living in London and recruiting internationally, all of the international companies we work for, they're all changing the way they work.
Yeah.
They've all been thinking about what it might look like. So I just can't see it going back to the old style.
Yeah.
I think that's long.
Yeah, definitely agree. There's been some sort of spectrum or evolution of how it used to be. And I think different companies, different industries will have different policies. So I think we should just watch this space and see how it pans out.
Definitely. Just on inclusivity, because I think, you know, we talked about, I think we talked about women last time, and it was International Women's Day a couple of days ago. So, you know, I think there's been a lot of stats around disproportionately affected by COVID. Typically women do more of the home responsibilities. I think also I was reading a stat the other day that more women have been in unemployment during COVID than men, which I'm not sure why. It'd be useful to unpack that. But again, like whatever the great thing I think about this new future world of work and the inclusivity and the flexibility is that, you know, it's going to give the opportunity for more families, for both to work and for both to do well. Because during this pandemic, if you were a husband and wife, whatever, working, you could only work half a day if you had kids.
Right.
Like you just couldn't. And a lot of CEOs I spoke to were like, that's cool. You know, like you've got a kid, two kid, whatever, both parents are working. So, you know, I think as time goes on, I'd love to see companies think a lot more about making sure that, and, you know, women, working parents, single parents, you know, they're given the right opportunities and the right structures to be able to continue their careers and do well. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. I think, we've seen like a lot of stats, and I've read a lot of things around women have a disproportionate responsibility at home, doing like household chores and responsibilities, and then obviously looking after kids. I think the statistics showed as well that men tend to be more senior roles, unfortunately, and especially in a lot of countries, and Asia's you see that quite a lot as well. So yeah, I think so they kind of like have to make a decision. If someone's going to kind of step away from work, then who's that going to be? And then if the woman of the household is earning a lesser salary, then they're probably going to make that kind of economic choice. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a big life decision to make if you're a woman in your 20s and 30s. But historically, you know, you're thinking about, if I want to get to the top, I've got to be on it every single day, right? 5 days, 7 days a week, like super long hours. But I think now if we can get to the stage where, you know, we're okay with people being like not choosing their hours, but, you know, like flexing, like when is the best time for you to work to enable you to do your job and to look after your family, we'll be in a good spot. And it feels like, and again, I think really this is dependent on location, on country, but, you know, it certainly feels like we're getting more towards that. It's of course never. Sorry.
Different companies have different policy, obviously, as well. So again, like taking your Goldman example, like if you're on the trade desk, you have to work within certain hours. But if you're kind of working in other industries, then that's probably a bit more flexible. And I know, a lot of my friends, they kind of do the like set up the kids and have breakfast with them in the morning, and then get to work, and then they put them to bed, and then do some work after dinner and that kind of thing. So yeah, so it's kind of, it strings the day out a bit. But I think it's just having that, like you're right, it's having that flexibility to be able to manage that home life. Then definitely valuable there.
Yeah. So I think I love we spoke about this last time, but this is just so key for me, is community. And I think that ultimately ties us all together.
Yeah.
You know, whether if you're working remotely, when you're going to the office, you're doing your gym online, we all want to belong to a community, right? And so, and never has that, like, for me, it's proved it so much during this time when you're at home.
Yeah.
And although I couldn't physically, you know, go and see my team, or I couldn't physically go into the gym, you know, or go to the synagogue or whatever, you know, all of these different little communities that I have. But certainly the technology and the different platforms have enabled me to really stay super connected, which for me has been brilliant.
Yeah, no, for me as well. So ditto to everything you've said. Like, I've now based in Singapore. I lived in Japan for 7 months, 6, 7 months, and had a couple of great communities there. So Sogo Fitness, which was like a fitness community, and then Social Innovation Japan. So as you know, I'm very passionate about social impact, and they had a really great group there. Now back in Singapore, usually I wouldn't be able to see them at all. But now they set up like virtual events and virtual fitness boot camps and things like that. So I've been able to connect again with that community and friends there. So I think it's like the pandemic does have like bright sides to it, I guess, for like being able to connect with people virtually and kind of when you're forced to do these things.
You're right. I think we're lucky. Like it's this time. Because again, I can say, what, 20 years ago, Facebook's 20 years old or something, right? Pre-Facebook, let's say. Pre-Facebook, I mean, it would have been hard. I mean, when we were at school, it was, I mean, I think we just about got mobile phones, but we might have texted each other. But we would never have been so like we wouldn't not have stayed in touch. But as time's gone on, with all of these amazing platforms, you know, we can see what we're doing in each other's lives. I feel like I've followed your life, your travels, you know, like you feel quite close to someone, even though you don't see them so often. So, you know, again, I'm grateful for all of that stuff. It's not the gym thing, because my gym went online, my CrossFit gym, and there's the CrossFit Open, which is starting in a couple of days. It's a global thing. And although it's not quite as good as working out next to someone, it's pretty good. Like, it just it makes me do it, and it's been quite a bit of a lifesaver, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So I think without kind of exercise and fitness and virtual workouts or virtual yoga, I don't think I would have kind of fared as well as I did throughout kind of like that work from home period. So definitely appreciated everything that was going on in that space.
So do you see, so if you're just again thinking about the like work and personal life, do you see the future now being a mix between you're going to go see people face to face in the office, but plus keeping up with some of these virtual communities of people that you've developed?
I think for the foreseeable future, it's going to be like that anyway. So at least for probably like the next 12 months, like we're going to have half the people in the office and half working from home, like every other week. So and then we're still going to have to continue having virtual team meetings. So that will kind of carry on. And obviously now I'm working in a global team with team members across the world. And I can't go see them like on a regular basis. So we have virtual meetings anyway, and that would have happened pre-COVID anyway. So I think, definitely that will kind of like continue to be like a hybrid model. And sometimes we have like physical meetings with limited number of people. And then I think that's really valuable, just kind of helping to build relationships and read people's body language and just having that kind of contact. But yeah, I think working in like a global team, you're always going to have to have a virtual environment anyway. So that will inevitably continue.
True. How do you do a video call when you've got like, say, 3-4 people in the room physically, then you've got like a few people on, you know, on the video? Isn't that it's a bit odd, isn't it? That needs to be thought.
Yeah. I mean, that happens quite a lot anyway. So usually like Singapore's a hub, Hong Kong's a hub as well. So usually that people tend to congregate in these kind of spaces pre-pandemic. And then, there's probably 1 or 2 people dialing in from home or like another country. So I guess we're kind of used to that environment, but yeah, it's you've got to kind of be very inclusive to your point, like being inclusive is very important. So you got to make sure that everyone's voice is heard throughout the meeting.
Have you had people that have started in your team virtually? Because again, when you've got like a face-to-face personal relationship and then you go into this stuff, and I don't know about you, but I think I've got closer to my team over this pandemic because we've probably spoken a lot more. But then when you have someone joining virtually, it's quite tough, getting them involved. Sure. You won't know what their fridge looks like quite yet.
Yeah. The whole virtual onboarding is definitely challenging. I've seen some great managers do it really well. They kind of set up daily calls and just like check-ins, and then they introduce them to a whole bunch of people and then have lots of calls with them. When it's permissible, just having like catching up for a lunch with someone is always great. Just to kind of put a face, like have a face-to-face. I think it is very challenging. So I've had a whole bunch of friends who started companies in the virtual environment, and even going to the office, right? So you go into an empty office and pick up your laptop, and then you have to leave 5 minutes later because you can't stay and even see the office, right? So it's really, really challenging. But yeah, I think it's going to be that for a little while.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also look at, we talked about it a little bit off air, but the tech stocks have done great. Zoom, I just still can't fathom how they've done so amazing, where, like Google, Facebook, etc. should, like, it feels like and Microsoft should have been the standard. It's amazing how they, how suddenly it's, let's do a Zoom. It's just like, it's part of the dictionary now, right? Like, let's just do a Zoom.
Yeah, it's like you've made it, as they say, you made it as a company when you become a verb, like Google or Uber, right? And now you come Zoom is like a thing. So it's pretty impressive.
It's so crazy, but I think that will continue. But we've also had, I don't know if you use this. Have you been using Clubhouse?
Yeah, I've got Clubhouse. How are you finding it?
So I've been on there about maybe 2-3 months. So I had a little look around, and there's such a variety of rooms that you can hop into. A lot of the dialogue was like Gary V style. It was like, which I do love, by the way, in case he's watching. A lot of them are like hoping, I think, to monetize the rooms, right. Or a lot of the people are going like really hard. They're talking about, get rich in property. So there's that kind of side to it. I've been going into quite a few HR and recruitment rooms, and there's a few friends that run some rooms, which I think is great. It's like wandering, for me, it's like wandering down the corridor, doors either side, and you can just hop in, you have a little listen. Nice. Maybe you join on the stage, maybe you don't, you hop out. And so I think it's quite nice. Again, it's where you want to spend your time.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right? Like this. Yeah. So I love audio. I love podcasts. I love listening to audio books and stuff like that. There's some really interesting conversations there. And I think, like if I look back at this video that we're doing right now in like 10 years time, it feels like I think Clubhouse would have grown.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
I feel like it would. I feel like it will grow because, like, not everyone likes to go on a video or watch a video. Like, it's quite easy just to hop, put that headphone in, and also the amazing thing right now, and I've been speaking about this a lot, and for people looking for, to progress their career, get these leadership roles and stuff. Never have you had access to you've got like such amazing access to the top CEOs on the planet. Like, you could have hopped on with Elon Musk on Clubhouse, like whenever he was on, like a month or two ago, and you could have been selected to have gone on stage, and you could have spoken with Elon Musk. Now, 5 years ago, actually like 2 years ago, 1 year ago, you just couldn't have done that. LinkedIn as well. If you're looking for a role right now, and I talked about this last week, it's free to use LinkedIn. Like, you can hop on the platform. You can search for something that's relevant to your industry. You can sort it by posts, content. Then you can start liking, commenting. And suddenly the people that you want to work for, the business leaders of these, are going to be noticing you. And I think for me, it's so amazing, these platforms. It's like the modern day, the modern day cocktail party, or, going down the
Yeah,
pub.
right.
Like you don't even have to do that now. You can sit in your flat
Yeah,
and you can network hard on LinkedIn and Clubhouse and etc. And you can land yourself your next role from doing that.
yeah. I think, yeah, definitely, like the power of technology behind, like, for networking purposes. Yeah, definitely there's so much you can do now. Interesting what you said about Clubhouse, like being still here in 10 years time. Like I've like heard varying different views, because obviously audio is kind of an easier entry point. So a lot of people don't want to kind of dress up and put on like a shirt or something to attend like a Zoom or video conference call. And then they can just like actually listen in via audio, and just similar to a podcast like you described. Yeah, definitely some great content. There's some not so great content, and it's what I find difficult is to find, like, filter through all the content. There's so much stuff going on, like pretty much on anything that you could ever imagine. So just trying to find the right rooms with the great speakers is often challenging.
Definitely. They
Yeah,
might get bought. They might get bought. So,
yeah,
but I think so. Either they will be here in 10 years, or something like it. Like it will get bought by someone. And
yeah,
like I think the live, the thing I like about the idea is the live audio discussion stuff.
yeah,
And maybe it was just, timing's everything, right? Like wonderful timing that people are at home and they want
yeah,
a window, they want this community aspect, and so
yeah.
setting up a room, having friends joining a room and making new friends, it just plays into as
Definitely.
humans what we really like.
Yeah, and I mean, all the tech companies are now looking at like doing similar products. I think Twitter's got something similar, and ByteDance is exploring something similar as well. So it's definitely something there. There was a question, like I was listening to a podcast, like the longevity of audio, because once it's great that everyone's at home and like kind of working from home environment, but once people go back into the office, then will that kind of need still be there? So yeah, it'll be interesting to, like, because obviously you can go to conferences. If you go back to the office, yeah. And it's interesting what you said about like walking down the corridor and just popping into rooms. So it sounds very like similar to a conference kind of environment, just at your fingertips, right? So yeah, conferences obviously struggled to this past year, but as they kind of go back in this hybrid model, then yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out as well.
Yeah, if they do. I mean, I attended the advertising week APAC thing that you were helping to work on. I would never have done that.
Yeah.
But also you've got suddenly with these conferences, if they're virtual, you have a global audience.
Yeah.
Like why would I go and attend I would never go and, well, maybe, but hop on a plane to Japan and attend the conference and then hop back. Like it's expensive, it takes time, effort. Suddenly I can do it in my living room. I can make a beautiful cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I can learn from, those conferences have like the best speakers. They're really nicely curated and it's great learning. So I'm not sure it will
I think it is. It's similar to the office discussion, right? So it's, some people will want to go back to the physical conferences for the networking opportunities, and kind of a lot of people like on the conference scene because they actually want to get away from their hometown and just travel somewhere and then add on the weekend so they can like see somewhere new or bring the family along for the weekend as well. So yeah, I think there's kind of pros and cons there. Yeah.
True. Last question on this before we wrap it up. Do you think my avatar will be flying over to a virtual conference in somewhere anytime soon?
Definitely, I think that's going to happen. So AR VR is going to take off. So there's a whole bunch of companies that are working in this space now. So yeah, the Lewis avatar will be somewhere else very soon. I've seen a lot of blockchain kind of things coming up as well. So a lot of these blockchain avatars are become much more popular. So definitely it's a space to watch, and it's coming soon.
Love it. Awesome, Jason. Thank you so much. Always great to chat.
Yeah, you too.
Hopefully, we'll see each other face to face one day really soon.
One day soon, yeah.
in London, or maybe I'll come over to Singapore.
Yeah, come over, or your avatar will come across.
My avatar will come across. So. Awesome, cool.
Nice.
Right, thanks a lot. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will speak to you soon. Awesome.
Thanks.